of hippie, you know, a little bit more hippie, but it's just as intelligent.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the name of that show again?
Midnight Gospel.
Midnight Gospel. Okay, we're live now, so I wanted people to know to go watch
Perfect.
Midnight Gospel. I don't know if they caught everything beforehand.
Duncan Trussell and Dr. Drew's new show on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel.
You're the second person this week, so that's all it takes. It depends on the people who are recommending it, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, two high quality suggestions in 1 week. I'm gonna be tuning in this weekend. All right, we got Brian Mackenzie here. He is a performance geek across the board. Shit, man. We've hung out quite a bit, and I've interviewed you quite a bit. And
yep.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody, man, I've been following Brian since, man, I want to say it was maybe 2008. 2008, I started doing your CrossFit endurance running stuff, and fucking watched you go through, basically saying, hey, we should be strength training as endurance athletes and working on running mechanics to getting into breath and ice and all that mess. So I'm stoked to have you on, and I'm also really excited to be able to interview you during this progression. Like, oh, okay, I would love to go and watch our first interview, which was fucking hilarious.
Oh wow, wasn't that at in Tennessee?
Yeah, it was at my gym in Tennessee. It's funny as I didn't even think about that. As I'm talking about you, that scene jumped in my head. It was fun.
Brother, that was actually a pretty surreal time for me. Because I think I was out at Froning's place, wasn't I, at that time? And then we came to, I know we were doing a seminar as well, I'm pretty sure. And then we came to, I knew about you guys, and I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. I'm wondering if Chris is going to fucking contain himself. And, no. So I didn't know, and you know how and I'm not I'm this kind of ex-punk rocker. I'm still punk rock, but I'm not going to take shit from anybody. So I'm going to fucking, anyway, it was an interesting time. And I felt like I walked out of that thing, and Chris was drinking too.
He was drinking. I think, was he trying to, did you have the experience of him trying to push your buttons?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. He tended to do that.
But he and I actually walked out of that almost like best friends.
Yeah. You guys have some things in common. That was the thing. And that was probably you push people's buttons too. And as you've gotten older, gotten a little smoother. I think we all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not out to prove as much anymore.
Yeah, I get it. So all right, we're in the middle of a world where people are freaking out about the respiratory health. And it seems like you are uniquely positioned. You've been
I planned this whole thing.
Yeah, you and fucking Bill Gates got together. I know what's going on here. No. But
I wish I was in that ecosystem of Bill Gates.
Yeah,
but
I wish you had the level of influence he has. That would be a much better scenario. In my humble opinion. So people, I know that when all this went down, I started looking at coronavirus and the symptoms, and I go, oh, wow, I'm in a pretty good position myself, do a lot of breath work, train, take really good care of myself, and I could be doing a lot better. And, started, what else am I going to do? We're in quarantine, so might as well just train and eat, sleep, and do some work and get as healthy as we can get. So what, are you in the same boat, or has nothing really changed for you? Or is there something that this pinged me and now I'm putting a little more attention here?
my life has not really changed. Like kind of before we started recording, my life really has not changed much in the last 4 years. Even with this pandemic going on, because I work from home, and I mean, look, nobody's going to tell me I can't go out on the trails, right? Like, and go out and get outside. I'm going to do that regardless of what's happening.
Yeah.
But I'll keep my distance. Nonetheless, it's interesting because I mean, I probably do at least one consult or call a day with somebody at a high level who is concerned or has COVID. And, you know, it's, the focus has become, you know, like the interesting thing here is that, you know, the scary part is that people actually, it's like Rob did this really well, who I work with. He's like, look, people right now are like wanting to learn how they want to go. It's like learning to deadlift and just wanting to pull 400 pounds off the ground.
Yeah.
Immediately. And people don't understand that's not how this works. And, you know, unfortunately in the fitness industry, we've created quite the illusion of what health is, and health is interrelated with performance, and that's not necessarily true. And
yeah, I made a comment about that on Instagram last week, and I got some people that, yeah, it was like a response to a comment that came into this thing, and people wanted to cite some high level athletes, and like, well, they got it, and I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It turns out that, you know, I mean, a lot of the work I've done in the last 6 or 7 years has seen, even at the highest level, world champions, we've seen fairly CO2 intolerant. And when I say that, I don't mean to just like confuse everybody with saying that, but when I say CO2 intolerant, that means they're not metabolically efficient. CO2 is a metabolic stress messenger, and it works with our breathing. We take a conscious breath because of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide's role
is that when we take a big sigh? Like, we take a big sigh, is that a sign of like our body wanting to get it out?
It could be. In a lot of cases, yawning becomes something that's, you know, like, that's funny because, you know, I can't, this is theory, but based on everything I've looked at, nobody's really been able to, you know, figure out what yawning really is for. And the fact is it's because you're fucking tired. People like it's like we need all this like information, and it's like, yeah, your body is literally telling you you are tired. And yes, it's a contagious thing if you see somebody else do it, but by and large, most people don't recognize when they're actually tired.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they caffeinate, or they blow through it and go work out, or they just ignore that response versus just like chilling out for a minute. My dog doesn't ignore it, you know?
Yeah.
That said, you know, sometimes it's, you know, you do need to shut it off and you need to turn it on, but whatever. You know, back to the whole COVID, you know, this whole thing is, you know, breathing is about understanding a relationship between carbon dioxide and oxygen. Everything in this system that we have that's called a human being depends on oxygen. So our physiology is completely dependent upon oxygen, because aerobic metabolism or cellular respiration is the vehicle for how we move energy. The only way we get to move that oxygen, that energy, is if we have a good relationship with carbon dioxide, because hemoglobin prefers to have a tighter relationship to carbon dioxide. So hemoglobin is what sits inside the red blood cell. It's part of the heme group. It attracts oxygen into the red blood cell and transports it. But it also transports carbon dioxide. And by and large, most people are over breathers, or because of our kind of stressed lifestyles that we lead, and our lack of movement lifestyles, we've become very inefficient at these things. The civilized, like there was a divergent situation that happened with civilization, largely. And that was convenience, that was comfort, that was not doing as much. And that came with a lot of things in the pipeline, including how we eat and what we ate, because our jaws have changed, which changed our sinus structures, which you'll never see a single, you can go back in records as far as you want. And if anybody's recorded what they've seen with indigenous culture and breathing, you will see a mouth wide shut society. You will see a society that does not talk a whole lot. They have intention with what they speak. A lot of words have dual meanings, like pranayama, like esoteric words, energy, breath control. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
There's Hebrew language for the same thing as well. There's a lot of stuff down the pipeline that I could get into, and I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but we lost connection to all of this by not listening to those who came before us. And that in the United States, that was Native American culture. Hey, check this out. We don't set up in floodplains in permanent resident, New Orleans and Houston. Okay. Like, these are just simple things that are really why did we decide to do that? Because we're just not listening to things, and we think we're better than what nature has created or used in order to create something to get rid of water that's coming out of something, right?
Yeah.
We think we're better or stronger than this in a large regard. So we don't listen real well. And part of that listening was how you treat, the land, and that land is a part of you and I. And that is, a part of like why we move. And like, look, I'm not going to pretend that I don't live in a house and I don't drive a car and I don't I'm a part of civilized world. I'm complicit in this whole fucking thing. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've had a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in nature with indigenous people doing their things, and then I get in a car and I drive to the airport and I fly international, and I'm sitting there thinking, "Fuck, man,
this is weird.
This is
it's
weird.
weird.
Like
it's weird.
I'm like, should I be doing this?
Yeah. And here, I'm not suggesting we don't. What I'm suggesting is that, and I mean, this is kind of the language that you just used too. And I'm not like coming at you. I'm not coming at anybody. My angle here is very different from what's going on in the world right now, especially the breath space. Like, I'm actually pretty disgusted with the people in the breath space and the wellness space. I'm not going to call anybody out, like anything like that, but I'm just, there's a lot of people who are taking advantage of a situation which they don't understand. Like, we don't understand what this virus is totally doing, but we do understand that, like, those of us who are healthy, who actually have a breath practice, who actually exercise enough, understand breath control to some degree, like, understand eating real food is probably the best option. Like, staying hydrated, taking care of ourselves. So we are nature. We love to disguise it as though nature is out there.
Yeah.
And it's not that that's not true. That is nature back there on the trails behind me. But this is nature.
Yeah.
I am nature. But I became so disconnected to what this was and is that I've had to create this duality that I can say, like yesterday, Earth Day, like, fuck that, talk about being disgusted again. But, I can't tell you how many fucking out of shape, fat, obese, unhealthy human beings are putting things out about saving the earth. And I'm like, let me get this.
Oh, Brian, you just lost your audio for some reason. And we're waiting on Brian's audio to come back. Let's see. I think maybe it's your headset.
How's that?
Oh, perfect. All right, you left off with there were some, I guess you could say, unhealthy people.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fairly unhealthy people out there hammering on society, human beings, about how we treat this planet. And I have an inherent problem with that, in that anybody who is not keeping their own house in order has no right to sit there and tell the rest of the world how they should be treating our house.
Yeah.
And and this is where the problem lies, is that we
Lost your audio again. We'll get this solved, folks. No big deal. I think he's going to switch over to something that's going to work long term.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, my headphones were.
I get it. Those things can be
technology
glitchy
bro.
with Zoom.
Yeah. Anyway, there's this incredible disconnection with self. And that is largely a denial of being. And we love to put everything we've got kind of on everybody else. Like our own, like, I don't have any responsibility towards what it is I have going on with me, but I'm going to put everything else on. I'm going to look at the totality of the planet, and the fact that the earth is being destroyed by human beings, and you all are responsible. We're so bad. And it's like, hey, maybe if you started treating yourself a little bit better, people would actually start treating themselves a little bit better. Started taking a little bit more responsibility for your own health, taking a little bit more responsibility for your own housekeeping, and understanding how to make a better decision and how it's all connected and moving more. And, it just, all of this goes down the line. I mean, it becomes difficult for me because I'm not somebody who's about, hey, let's just do this calm, hippy dippy breathing practice. I'm like, what we're doing is, hey, when you're on fire, if you're not using your tools, they don't work.
Yeah.
So you can do all the meditation and breathing you want, but if you can't do that while you're fucking, while somebody's coming at you, or you're, in the heat of a moment, your tools don't work, or you don't understand them. And so this is where the work starts to really take place. And we try to kind of separate this thing into, what are you doing right now? Like, you don't need to just go sit down. Look, I sit down, I have a breath practice. That is not what I'm saying. That's only training.
Right.
But when I shut up here and you start talking, I will default into some organized breathing patterns so that I'm actually paying attention to you and listening to you, so that I'm not drifting off like the old Brian used to and start thinking about what he's going to say next.
What does that organized breathing pattern look like? I know what you're talking about. Doing a lot of interviews over the years, I used to worry about my own mind needing to keep up with what was going on. And then I did some practices that taught me how to listen to people. Like, holy shit. And now the trick is, when I talk to people about podcasting, is when you're having a conversation, breathe really deep into your belly and wait, like really be present with the conversation. And that's really the trick. That's not what people want to hear normally. But what is this breathing pattern, organized breathing pattern you're talking about?
Well, it could be several, is what it could be.
Okay.
But the
For
idea,
listening.
Yeah, well, the idea is that, look, I was just doing two things: listening to you and adjusting my stand so that I could do that. But I'm like, I'm intentionally inhaling on key parts. I'm intentionally controlling my exhale as well. Right. And I know that if I take a full inhale, I'm also like, and this is just through observation, but then also when you look at research and you start to study things, you start to see things, right? Like, a full inhale is going to elicit a parasympathetic response at the top end, because I'm actually filling the end ranges of my lungs, right? The top ends of them. And I'm only going to achieve that if I'm nasal breathing, meaning I don't do that if it's almost impossible. Like,
saying it's almost impossible to get a full breath with your mouth.
You are correct. You just move more air with your mouth. Okay.
More volume per second.
You got it. Yep. And this
Okay.
is one of the big things with why nasal breathing is so important, is that it actually just, the most important thing I think with it, well, it's all important, but is that it actually slows respiration rate.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. So
Yeah.
when I take people and I, take an athlete and I'm like, hey, you got 3-4 weeks of nasal only breathing with your training. And they're like, what? And I'm like, just do that. That's all we need to do right now. Trust me, you can go as hard as you want, as long as you can keep your trap shut. Then we can learn to gear up and use specific patterns after that. But that tells me right there, we've just restructured how they use their aerobic system.
Got it. So let's rewind a bit. You were talking about carbon dioxide tolerance and all of this. Why is that important?
Yeah. So CO2 is a metabolic stress messenger of the body. And our psychometabolic reactivity is how we react to carbon dioxide. We have I'll start with the brain, all right? So we have our respiration centers are set up in the brain stem. The brain stem is the oldest part of the body, oldest part of the brain, called the reptilian brain, and it's there for a reason. It sends out autonomic processes, right? It's the end result of emotions and thinking and sending out directives. Autonomic refers to autopilot, right?
Yeah.
The entire goal of our nervous system is to be autonomous. This is very important to understand, okay? Meaning that is efficiency, okay? But you cannot learn anything in an autonomous state, right? So if I'm in this autonomous motion, I'm not going to learn in anything. When I'm brushing my teeth or I'm driving my car and having a conversation, like, I'm not going to be learning much, right? Like, a lot of the things are going on autopilot, right? Like,
And
so go ahead.
I mean, and is it accurate to say if you're in a stressed state, you're more likely to be to be autonomous?
Bingo.
Right.
That is what it's for.
Yeah.
Get the F out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Like, right? So going back to CO2, the respiration centers are set up in that brain stem, and they pick up on the carotid artery and the aortic artery. That's where the detection systems are in. So now the detection systems now tell us they're going outwards. So it's a predictive system. All right. It's not an actual. So
is it predictive of what's, is it a future predictor?
Yep. It's trying to predict the future. And so because of the lifestyles that we lead, and we're not outside being chased by wolves. I mean, most of us aren't.
Speak for yourself. No,
you are now, but but you're just keeping your natural state in check. Mm-hmm. But I would beg to offer up that any human being who actually does put themselves in situations like that doesn't respond to shit in society the same way that people who actually just stay in society respond to it. Why? Well, here's why. Because the predictive system runs haywire because of our thinking and our emotions. So we get emotional responses to things, and the panic switch is there for a reason. We're told to take a breath based on where we think the carbon dioxide is going to be at. The interesting part here is that there is an actual panic switch when we hold our breath or when CO2 rises, and you don't need an amygdala or a fear center in order for this to go off. So people who actually have suppressed amygdalas or have none, right?
These are usually the daredevils that.
Yes, but there's beyond that, and people with diseases that literally, don't, and they have to have like caretakers and stuff, because it turns out you actually need fear to stay alive. So
interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of hippies I've gotten in arguments with that about, because they think fear is like the leading cause of, and this is something I disagree. I think it was some famous dude's quote about fear being the root of all
evil and whatever. I think
Right.
it was Gandhi, actually. I disagree with that. It takes context, and fear is absolutely necessary. It's understanding fear and where it's coming from so that I can learn from it, right? And we put fear in place, and we put these mechanisms in place to where anger, resentment, frustration, fear start to intrude on this breath center, right? So we're bypassing these switches to some degree. And so there's how the brain and the nervous system work, right? But here's the interesting part is that my breath is directly interwoven into my nervous system. So my inhale is sympathetic in nature. My exhale is a suppression of sympathetic activity. So it's like when people go jump in ice tubs and they can't control their breath. It's not that they can't control their breath. They can't control their exhale.
Can't control the exhale.
They can't control it because it's a sympathetic high up regulation at first, right? And go jump in and feel it. You'll get it the first 2 breaths if you're really good. Like you start to see it, you're like, oh, like it trips up, right?
Yeah.
If you go work out really hard and you try and control your exhale, you'll find a trip up on that way out, and you're like, ugh. Like, and you have to inhale again. Okay.
There's like a stutter in the breath.
That's it, brother. That's it. That stutter is your sympathetic nervous system going, yo, we still need to be on. Right.
Yeah.
So we have played around with this enough to integrate places. And it turns out that if you actually just do, I don't know, 5 or 10 breaths like this, and you blow off a little carbon dioxide, you can then control your exhale. I now controlled the carbon dioxide. So I offloaded carbon dioxide and I tripwired the system.
So if I'm feeling like I need air, a handful of breaths like you just did, and then resume nasal breathing.
Then resume to controlled nasal breathing and try and slow and control your exhale. If you can double time your exhale off of your inhale, you will for sure be parasympathetic dominant.
So I get the need, or I don't know about the need, but the desire to have that throughout the day. I'm working throughout the day. I'm talking to you. I'm gonna be on my laptop.
Yeah. You need to transition.
Nasal breathing the whole time, deep into my belly, but then I'm gonna go run later.
Yeah.
And where am I at when? Is there a benefit to me upregulating myself during that run if I'm going to go for distance, or what do I want to stay relaxed? How does this work?
Yeah. What do you want? What are you trying to achieve? Higher performance? Like, look, there's a time and a place for mouth breathing. If you don't understand that, it's time to do some work towards that. And this is what we're offering up. This is why, look, baseline, fundamentally, here's the basics of breath work. Understand the difference between nose and mouth breathing. What does one do? What does the other? When is it necessary to mouth breathe? Okay. Let's work through that. If I'm doing high intensity work, I'm going to have to mouth breathe at some point because the metabolic demand is saying I need more oxygen in the environment, right? In order to work. It's like an Olympic weight lift. Like if I do something explosive, there's just not enough oxygen in that environment in order for it to work. Glycogen's not even there. And so we have to go creatine phosphagen, right?
Yeah.
So it's just snap, because it's like, I'm trying to generate power through that. So people who are like aerobic or endurance athletes struggle really hard with high explosive work like that, because that system it's so oxygen rich. It's so type, one fiber rich that it's like, oh, like I don't have any ability to transfer over with this, right?
There's no stimulus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not enough stimulus. Right. And so if I'm going to go on a run, what's my goal for the run? If I want to go for a long run, well, that's a pretty aerobic effort. Right. But if I want to do some serious training in that run, maybe I want to throw in a couple, like 5 or 6 high effort repeats. Right. The idea is what am I trying to achieve with that? The objective is better oxygen transportation. Right. So if I'm going to go into a high effort, when does the transition happen from nose to mouth? When do I need to do that? And how quickly can I get back to my nose? That tells me exactly when I'm actually aerobic again. It's okay if it's not immediately. That just means we've got work to do and we've got an opportunity to do more work. The objective is to close that window on how quickly I can actually get back to a highly aerobic state, because that's the goal. The goal of all training is to make a better decision, right? It just so happens that making a better decision is parasympathetic in tone, and being parasympathetic in tone is more aerobically efficient. So the physiology works with the neurobiology in that it doesn't matter if I'm working out hard or if I'm carrying a conversation with you right now and I'm talking. I'm offloading carbon dioxide as I talk. Yeah. Therefore, I'm removing the variable carbon dioxide from a lot of the environment. So if I don't have enough oxygen available because there's not enough carbon dioxide available, the system is so intelligent that it just starts leaning more sympathetically and using up more glucose from that anaerobic side. And then eventually.
So the more you're talking, the more anaerobic you're going.
You got it, brother. The more you are using up of the glucose in terms of those anaerobic processes. Look, we've put on metabolic carts and done this. Gone out for a walk, shut my mouth, gone out, stopped, came back, gone out for a walk, opened my mouth, kept my mouth open and breathed through my mouth. Two entirely different energy systems are being used.
Interesting. So how do we know? You're saying high level athletes, and it's the whole spectrum of human beings.
Yeah.
If you're a high level athlete, you're not automatically, I guess
you don't get a hall pass.
Yeah. You're not in shape. Your breathing may not be in shape. You may not have your CO2 tolerance may be poor.
Yeah. You're more than likely better off than most.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you are aerobically efficient. Right. And this is like, look, this can't, I'm not saying this is everybody, but the fact is I have seen enough to where, like, look, man, we are suffer culture, especially in sports. And athletes in particular in working sports are all about how hard I can work, not how efficiently I can work.
Yeah. Even if we tell ourselves intellectually, we know work smarter, not harder and all that, there's still that pattern from, our youth. Cause I mean, like, look, our coaches and parents, when we were 6, 7, 8 years old, they were saying this kind of stuff to us. They didn't know any better.
No,
they didn't know what they were embedding, because that's the only thing they know.
No, I don't fault my parents for the problems that I had as a kid anymore. They did the best they could with everything they had.
Yeah.
And that's reality. What isn't reality is the story that I painted that, like, oh, my dad was an asshole and we didn't get along and this and that and him and and it did this to me. Well, I'm an adult now and I can either take responsibility for understanding that process or creating conjecture and making it personal that he was actually doing those things to me because it was about me. When in essence, it was never about me. It was, he only had certain tools, right?
Yeah.
We only have certain tools. And if we're doing the best we can, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. I find a lot of, I'll be coaching people a lot of times when they have a complaint about one of their parents or both their parents. It's a lot of what was not happening that they were focusing on and not on what was happening. And so it's, like you were saying, it's not reality. Mm-hmm. Like the reality is they did a bunch of things. And the thing that's not reality is all the things they didn't do.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the beauty. Yeah. This is the beauty of being human. I mean, so I run a program at San Quentin. And so I go in and see the inmates, and I haven't been able to go in for the last month, obviously.
Dude, I've been seeing that on Instagram. I go, what is Brian doing? This is awesome.
Yeah. It's fucking, it's the greatest teaching experience I've ever had. Cause I've never had anybody, and I've worked with a lot of people, man, like over 10,000 people, right? I have never had anybody more engaged in wanting to learn, right, than these guys. That in and of itself tells me a story, right? But I do something with them where I stuck a chair in the center of the room, and we there's about 30 guys, and we're in a circle, and I'm like, all right, what's in the middle of the room? What's in the middle of the circle? And everybody's like, a chair, and everybody agrees that it's a chair. Right. All right. Write down on a piece of paper what you see in that chair. And everybody wrote down something different. Said, so here's reality. That's a chair. Now, what did you see? What did you see? What did you see? What did you see? That's what you see. And you just need to be heard or seen on what it is you see. But the reality is that's still just a chair. And we exist in an environment where we're creating stories around things up here. But and that's great, because that's what we've got a prefrontal cortex for. But we've also got that prefrontal cortex in order to pull us back into, it's just a fucking chair.
Yeah.
So if I'm sitting in traffic and I'm fucking going, fuck this. And this was an epiphany I had when I lived in Southern California before I left for the middle of nowhere, right? I was like, I am choosing to be here. I am getting angry at my choices, not the fact that I'm actually sitting. And so it was just this mind. I'm like, the reality is, where am I trying to go? And what am I going to do when I get there? Right. So the whole system starts to play itself out. And guess what I'm doing when I'm doing that? I'm turning on more aggressive music. And it's not that aggressive music's not okay. I still listen to it, but I'm getting heated. My breathing's changing. You know, sometimes, you know, some of those times I was doing things like Wim Hof. Oh, like, I'm upregulating myself. Oh, weird. Like, you know, like, these are all, and there's nothing wrong with Wim Hof method. It's great. You know, it's just another, you know, it's just another technique that's been passed down that was, you know, thousands of years old. But, you know, all of these things are there for a reason. There's a time and a place to upregulate. There's a time and a place to downregulate. So if you've got your day, and I'm going to be talking to people all day, well, I better behoove me to keep my mouth closed between that, and maybe do a couple breath cycles or look outside onto the horizon or out into a peripheral way in order to shift myself down in between these things, so that when it comes time to actually do something physically, that I can engage in that in the manner that I want to. And so I can then orchestrate, like, my breathing is the gateway to understanding what I'm doing metabolically. So if you're training for something, you're trying to elicit a metabolic reaction. Your breath is the direct connection to that. Your heart rate is late. How heart rate has continued to become this thing that tell people what zone they're in is insanity. This is one of the things we're going to try and just absolutely shatter. And the fact is we're going to, because I can show people at 200 watts on a bike mouth breathing, and that same 200 watts nasal breathing, and they're two different energy systems, and yet the heart rate goes, you know, doesn't change. And it's like, oh, weird. Wonder what's going on there. You know?
Yeah. So the whole being in the fat burning zone, or doing cardio or whatever, is way less to do with the heart rate and way more to do with what's going on with the breath.
Correct. The heart rate got into this game because what we do is we put people on a metabolic cart, and they strap them into a heart rate. And so the easiest thing to do is to correlate a heart rate with specific times when CO2, when gas exchange changes. The odd thing is that no scientist or nobody said, yeah, this changes throughout the entire day based on how you're dealing with stress or how much stress you've taken on. And oh, by the way, let's go back to that CO2 thing and psychometabolic reactivity. If I'm in a bad space, or if I've taken on too much and I've been thinking too much, right? I have suppressed my ability to tolerate carbon dioxide. So I've now metabolically changed what's going to happen when I go train. And thus my heart rate at 140 that's supposed to be fat burning is no longer fat burning. That's completely changed. And that changed in a day. And so Yeah.
I was working with a Czech practitioner a while back, and like I love those guys. And he goes, okay, you're really active. You move a lot. You're hot. You run hot. And you probably think a lot, like just the type of person you are. I was like, okay. I mean, I don't know how much I think compared to other people. And he goes, yeah. So basically the program was to lower the volume, spend more time in the ice, and do something to get my mind to chill the fuck out. And when that was brought to my attention, I started looking at the days where I was using my mind a lot, where there was a lot of attention going into my head, and then going and training. And those training sessions were shit. It was just, everything felt hard. But on the days where I was able, and now I've got my whole day mapped out in a way, and I'm relaxed throughout the day. I don't have like, every once in a while I'll have like a training session where it's like, oh, I came in with stress and whatever. But I started taking account for how much mental energy I'm using in a day, and attribute like that's work. That's something that I need to be watching. And I think that it's commonly overlooked. And it's, I've heard so many times and read so many times, so many X% of your calories are burned by the brain. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then now I'm looking at it, I'm going, makes sense. I could totally wear myself out thinking all day.
Chess players in tournaments can burn upwards of 6,000 calories a day.
What?
Free divers can burn almost 1,000 calories an hour diving. And their heart rate maybe gets up to yours and my resting heart rate. We are confused.
You know what? The gym of the future. The gym of the future is going to be. It's going to be all chess.
Look, man, I'd love to tell you, like, I didn't come up with this shit. Okay, this was shit that hit me like a fucking right hook out of nowhere, and I was like, holy shit! I've been talking about heart rate. Holy shit! I was talking about this nutrition program. Okay. Oh my god! Like, and it's like, oh my god! Like,
so what do you think about?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm with you. Like, here, man.
That's why when I say we are confused, I am literally meaning me. I'm involved in that. Like,
yes,
we are very confused. We have not made any biological advancements. We have made technological and medicinal advancements in our culture. That is all we've done. There is no biological advancement right now. In fact, it's a deterioration. We think we're so fucking smart because we create technology to do shit that makes us more dependent on it. And we don't seek a cure. A cure is painful. We seek relief.
Well said.
Man, I mean, that's not me. That's I think his name DeMello, from a book is called Awareness. And the thing I came up with is the cure to anything is understanding. That's it. The problem is nobody wants to understand shit.
No, just want, like you said, the relief.
That's it, man.
It's a symptom that's bothersome.
Yes.
And yeah, we definitely have a society, like you're saying, including myself, where how often am I seeking relief over getting down to the root cause of whatever's going on?
Day I do. Like,
yeah,
it's the smallest things, bro. If you really want to be honest with yourself, it's like the small. I'm like, oh wow, like I really like, but we need it. It's how the universe works. Like, it's how the yin and the yang work. It's how, like, you have to have some sort of stability with inside the chaos. If it's chaotic all the time, you're screwed. You've got to have some relief. But the problem is, and it's like, I constantly think about the kids who are brought up in these ultra rich families, and people are like, oh, they are given all these advantages. I don't know. I don't think that's an advantage.
Yeah,
I
the
don't.
older I get, the more I see it as a problem. Like
Yeah, because you spent time in other cultures, bro. And here's the problem with the United States and what our culture's done. And I'm with you. I'm guessing on this is that, you know, in other cultures, they look at people who decided not to go after wealth, but decided to go after a simple life as incredibly wise human beings. And we look at people who are incredibly wealthy as the actual wisest people in the land. And I'm not saying that they're not wise or they're not good at what they're doing, but we do not look at people who decide to take the simple life and be a part, like really be a part of society in its whole, versus living in a sheltered, covered life. And this is what I mean with kids who are brought up in these environments. They have bank accounts before anybody else. They have more money. They don't have to worry about money. So you're removing the variables. You're giving relief to something that's never going to understand what that actually means. And it goes far beyond just money, right? It's like anything at the push of a button. And this is where I'm talking about health and society and how it all kind of pans out. Is it's like, this is the byproduct. This is the planet, man. This is like, we don't get our shit like, guess what? Guess who's not treating the planet like shit? Mother Teresa, who went without. Gandhi, who went without. Christ, who went without. The Buddha, who went without. Like, I'll just keep going. Like, you know, these cultures and these people, they're like, I mean, they're regarded, they're held up highly because of what they did. And they understood something that was important. And we continue to just reinforce this thing. And we're sitting in it right now.
Yeah.
In an economy that's an illusion.
Yeah. The idea of, I mean, going all the way back to the beginning of the interview here, and you were talking about get your own house in order. And when we look at, I'm with you. This past week, I was interacting with some people on social media, and I got into some deeper water than I really cared to. I was just asking questions.
Yeah.
To try to get people thinking, and then of course I'm causing some emotional triggers, and people are getting pissed at me, and I'm like, I actually don't even want to be having this conversation. And I go, it's a distraction. And then I put together a list. I literally, in my notes, I have house in order, to-do list. And I talk about getting the house in order a lot. It's cool to hear you say that. And I'm sitting here, and, you know, there's 10 things on the list. You know, there's some things I need to get in order. And for me to be on the internet arguing with people and spending any effort, mental, again, like you're talking about, this mental space causing stress for no fucking reason. And when I've got more important stuff to do, which is get my house in order. And then we look at, I mean, I have a history of working to, you know, and making money when stressed, when things aren't going my way. It's like, well, I know what to do. That'll give me a little hit, and I'll feel better because I did a thing that made the business some money or something like that. And that's not when I'm the happiest. That's not when things are the smoothest. And that's not when I'm being the friendliest to the planet. And yeah, I can see how financial wealth can create a separation. It's like almost like you're in you get a big house, you're separate from the rest of society, disconnected from self. It's easier to be disconnected from self because there's all this outside stimulus. And what we're looking at right now is it seems like there's this really big threat that's been produced, whether it be by the planet or humans. And it sounds like to you, it wouldn't matter. Nature produced it, even if humans created it. And fuck, man, like we did this.
Well,
we did this,
yeah.
dude. Like it's not.
Look,
is there going to be something
yes
else?
Yes and no. All right. Yes, we did. Yes, we're responsible for stuff that shit. Like we don't long-term think anything. We short-term everything, and we forget about history. Right. In fact, we teach history that is a one-sided variable for certain people to accelerate the same bullshit or perpetuate the same things that continue to drive us into the problems that we continue to see. Right. We look, any species or any organism wants to take over. You let mice go without, they're going to take over your fucking house.
Yeah.
So will cockroaches. So will deer.
Yeah.
So will pigs. Like, it just so happens any species will do this. And I'm not like, look, we do have a responsibility, but I think that responsibility begins with me.
Yeah.
That was something I was taught a long time ago, but it took me a long time to fucking really understand. like 20, more than 20 years ago, I was taught that. And it took me probably 15 years to catch on to that shit. And what responsibility meant. And I'm still learning what that means today to a large degree. But the fact of the matter is I've backed off of trying to tell people what they have to do and just started showing people what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And what's changed in my life as a result of it. And the amount of feedback I get on that and the opportunities that have come as a result of that far exceed anything I've been given in the past. We have opportunity in history and we ignore it. You know, it's so interesting because I love the history of the United States to a large degree, except told from the other side of things like, I mean,
it's kind of crazy. I grew up reading a version and then I become an adult and then all this stuff starts coming out. I'm going, I think I learned a small fraction of what happened. Like,
my favorite writer is James Baldwin. And that happened out of sheer, that happened as a relationship with a PhD who teaches at Harvard. She teaches African-American studies and she's a speaker. And I picked up on some stuff she was doing. And I was like, James Baldwin, I had heard of him, but then I started reading and I was just,
I don't know who James Baldwin is.
He's fantastic. He was a civil rights writer. He hung out with Dr. King. A lot of, he was Malcolm X. He was very much involved in all of that. But I also look at things from the Native American perspective. But there's a book out there that's probably one of the best written historical documents on Native American history, and it's done by a white guy. It's called Empire of the Summer Moon, and it's about Quanah Parker, who is the son of Cynthia Ann Parker, who was a woman who was captured by the Comanche when she was like 7. And she was raised Comanche, ended up marrying a chief and ended up having this kid. And Quanah Parker was the last of the Comanche. And the interesting thing about all this historical stuff and how it was played out was how we progressed into the prairie and what we continued to do, but what we didn't pay attention to, and all of the accuracy of the documentation of this stuff and how it happened. And I'm not saying one side or the other, but the interesting part is that, had the Colt revolver never been invented, this place would be very, very, very different. The Colt revolver is the only reason why the Comanche Indian did not take over the entire nation for what it was, because they knew how to fight off of horseback, and no other culture knew how to do that very well. And it was what they taught their kids. But you see within the process of history and what they're doing, and it just so happens, a guy who wrote a book in the same era by the name of George Catlin called Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life was in the United States at the time, documenting indigenous cultures, and he's documented throughout this book talking about the Comanches and other tribes and what was going on and what they wore and how they maneuvered and all of this very interesting stuff. It's the same guy who picked up on, through all this historical data, the most important thing that he picked up on being that nobody was breathing through their mouths. And they were terrified of getting the black mouth, which is what they called civilized man.
Interesting.
And nobody paid attention to that back then.
Well, of course not.
No, but I mean, it's like, that's 1867 or something, right? And it's crazy because I think I'm the only one who picked up on this, but it's only because I read Caitlin's work about Shut Your Mouth. Then I'm reading this book, and this is the second or third
you
time
put
I'm
the two
reading the book,
together. Damn.
and I'm like, holy shit, this is the same guy. Like, and there's nothing about nose breathing in there, but culturally, you're hearing what is going on and how they survive. How, dude, the Comanche Indians could ride like triple, if not quadruple, the range of any other person in the world. Why could they do that? And it's like, they're not that different. Their biology's the same.
Yeah.
Like, and where are we at now? We don't even touch what these people were capable of doing in terms of shooting bow and arrow or accuracy, even with a rifle. Like, we're so in a different world, and we think this just goes into where we believe we're at because we drive in cars and we talk on phones that have supercomputers. We're so smart.
Yeah, it's interesting how technology, there's this huge assumption that comes in with technology of like, I mean, the truth is you take away all my technology, there's it gets a little sketchy. Like me going and finding some food, I'm gonna have to learn some new shit. I'm not that smart when it comes to
I would be
surviving.
I'd be in the same situation to some degree. I mean, I could hunt. It's just, all right, there's plenty of deer out here. I'm sure I could find pig. There's birds, but I've only got so many arrows. I've only got, so many bullets. Like,
yeah,
it'll be different. I've got a dog to feed too.
I'm gonna rely on my ability to organize people and like convince.
Yeah.
It's like we should go do something. Maybe you guys go do that. I'll go over here and do this.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. What? All right. So someone's listening to this, and man, we went all over the place, but I want to bring it back to the breath.
Breathing. Yeah.
And how do I know if I'm CO2 tolerant or I've got work to do?
Simple. We've got a CO2 tolerance test. We've got a breath calculator on Power Speed Endurance. It's free. It's linked in my bio on Instagram. Or you can just go to Power Speed Endurance and put in breath calculator. You'll find it. A CO2 tolerance test is a max exhale test. And how long you can actually exhale through your nose determines how tolerant you are to CO2.
How long? How many seconds you can spend?
Yeah, the longer you can actually exhale, just trickling out air without stopping.
Yeah.
Just tiny bit of air.
You know what's crazy is all my experience with breath over the years, and even the last week I've been watching I'm in one place. I usually travel a ton, so progress is not that great for me. Normally I'm in a maintenance mode most of the time, and I've actually been making progress, and I'm watching my progress with my breath. And I'm remembering, I go, holy shit, rewind 10 years ago when I was a competitive athlete, my breath then, my CO2 tolerance then, complete shit. You tell me to exhale and hold, fucking immediately not doing well. Immediately, my body starts panicking. I look back, and when I was putting my body through the harshest training and competitions and all that, and my breathing was total shit. And that was when I look back, that was the thing that likely held me back the most. I mean, obviously what was running through my head was dictating so much of that, but my breathing was total shit. And I always thought I just need to train harder because I'm not in as good of aerobic shape. It just means I need to do more volume. And it's so crazy to hear this now and to be with this now and to hear you talking about it. I hope some younger athletes are getting on board with this a lot sooner. I mean, all right. So how long, I did cut you off. So, but how long you can have an exhale hold or exhale, how long you can exhale for through your nose?
Yeah. Through your nose.
Is
piercing your lips is real easy to control breathing, right?
So if you're breathing out,
you need glottal control and you need diaphragmatic eccentric control. So there's mechanical variable, there's the physiological variable, meaning how actually well you actually do tolerate it physiologically. This is going to tell us, and then your panic switch, how well you can tolerate, because everybody's panic switch goes off. It's just when and how, right? Yeah. So it's a 3-part test that allows us to understand some things. And so if you do it several times in a row, like, do it and then, relax for a couple minutes, try it again, relax for a couple minutes, try it again. You'll figure out if you get some actual neurological control of things, right? But when it stabilizes and hits that same number, you can't go up anymore. That's where your baseline is. And then you can input that number into our calculator and you can get a bunch of different breathing protocols. And the idea behind the breathing protocols is to figure out one that makes you feel like you're kind of upregulated, like you're alert but calm, which is good. And then you want one that makes you feel calm and tired, like you could go take a nap, right? Or go to sleep. And so the starting point becomes 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, 10 cycles of each. Get through that stuff. When it gets really easy, up it or redo your CO2 tolerance test and get the new number and start to increase that variable, right? And there's more advanced stuff people can do. But the basics is actually learning breath control. And you would be surprised that if you stop doing pranayamas and apneas where you're controlling breathing patterns, how quickly they fall off, right?
Is it how quickly the benefits fall off, or is that what you mean?
Yeah, benefits and the control.
Got it.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. So it's you still want to do these things throughout the week once you get good at them.
So I've been doing a lot of like breath of fire, like taking pieces of Kundalini breathwork practices and using those. Are you saying that's not as good?
And no, there's no such thing. Only thinking is. The thinking is, yeah, really. But if you want to build CO2 tolerance, you're going to want to start with some slow breath cycles, controlled, right?
Well, it sounds like you have a progression, whereas most stuff I do is, okay. Yeah, we're actually training here versus just going and doing something that is really random. Oh, I just lost your audio. I don't know what happened.
Am I there?
Yep.
So yeah, there's training. Most of my day is training, right? It's me considering the fact of what I'm trying to do. Like when I wake up in the morning, I do breath control. Like I do a breath practice. I'm either controlling breathing, doing some CO2 tolerance work, or I'm doing low oxygen work, right? So I'm actually stimulating low oxygen stuff so that I actually have a higher hematocrit level, so that I actually have better transport of CO2, better transport of O2. And then there's things like, just strictly breath control and learning how to control my breathing, but holding it on a pattern that is just at that edge of where my tolerance is, where I feel like I'm going to need another breath, but I can just get through those breath patterns, right? Then I go and I jump in the gym or I go out on the trails, and it's like, for the most part, if I'm not with my girlfriend or friends when I'm trail running, I'm controlling my breathing when I'm out there. I'm out there to train and enjoy things, but I also, if I'm going to enjoy things, I shouldn't be over breathing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just naturally will default into nasal breathing with most of what I do. And it's just the gearing that I'm using. So we developed a gearing system where it goes gears 1 through 5, and understand, gear 1 obviously being nose only. And that's your main aerobic part, right? And then gear 2 is a little bit faster on the inhale. right? Gear 3 is you're more anaerobic at that point. Gear 4, nose, mouth. And then gear 5 is mouth, mouth. The interesting thing is the moment you lose control of breathing, doesn't matter if it's mouth or not, you're done. That's when you're hypocapnic. That doesn't matter if you're
What's
working out.
hypocapnic?
You are blowing off carbon dioxide. You're hyperventilation.
Got it.
You're basically constricting the blood vessels at that point. You're becoming sympathetically dominant, survival mode. It's over. You're no longer.
You've got a limited amount of time before everything starts breaking down.
You aren't making any decisions anymore. You're freaking the fuck out. Your body, even if you don't think you're freaking the fuck out, your body is actually starting to shut itself down. You're just in a poor place. And so many, I cannot tell you how many athletes take themselves to that place and don't understand you're not actually doing anything at that point.
Yeah. I would say I'm working through one. When I'm running the trails around here, I'm usually between gears 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
I dip into 4. I haven't been going into 5 at all. I've also had the conversation with myself of I had so much time spent in that top gear. Well, I wouldn't even call it the top gear, just out of control.
Yeah.
That if I spend a few years nasal breathing only, probably I'm likely at the point now where I've healed the damage enough where I'm starting to push it again.
For sure.
So that's
man.
That's it's cool to talk to you, and you're talking about this is what you just described is so fucking simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not complicated. I understood everything you were saying. I imagine anyone else is going to understand what you were saying. And I love that it's simple, and hopefully it's going to be taught to athletes at a much younger age of I mean, boom, boom, boom.
For those that are questioning it, it's like, look, we've looked at the data, and here's the difference: is that the nose controls carbon dioxide. Okay, it filters things and works with your immune system for bringing things in. Okay, that's important, but it controls the carbon dioxide. Okay, I don't absorb any more oxygen breathing through my mouth or nose at submaximal levels. Okay, the change is in how much CO2 goes out, and I can just that took a lot. That took double, if not triple the time, right?
So inhale through the nose, out through the mouth. You're able to get rid of CO2 faster.
You're getting rid of CO2 faster. So the more CO2 we let out, that leans us more towards burning higher levels of glucose, strictly glucose. So we're not burning fat anymore, right? And we're moving more toward glucose and glycogen.
Yeah.
Right. So we're becoming more anaerobic because that it's easier, right? And so our nose is that governor. You don't need technology or data to tell you this. We're doing that. We're doing all of it. And this is why I loved history. They didn't need data.
No.
They know how to feel.
Yeah.
We lost the ability to feel, which is why we say nature's out there and not here.
Yeah.
When we start to learn to feel, we start to understand, oh, I am nature.
Yeah.
My physiology, the meaning of physiology is nature and origin.
Yeah. Would you think that if athletes get tuned in to their body,
Mm-hmm.
the sensations in their body, they're getting more feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and the necessity to stick strictly to a structured program becomes less necessary, and because you can get more, I guess you could say it's real-time data, like, oh, I actually feel tired today, instead of having to look at a watch and look at HRV and things like that.
Elite athletes are actually really good at this already to a large degree. They do need to fine tune it and understand it more and start to listen to things versus, let the scientists and the coaches and even the doctors use the technology to understand things so that they can tell us what is happening, right?
Right.
That doesn't dictate what you should be doing at all. This is our problem with research. And I mean, look, man, we started a research foundation. So it's not that I don't like research.
Right.
You're using research to dictate how you live your life or make your next move. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
That's
what's happening for most people right now.
Yeah. Especially in our world.
And well, especially in the performance world, but I mean, we look at even what's people are, when they're afraid, this is what I'm going back to, like people, when fear strikes, when stress hits and people are, they usually just go to like their level of training, right? You fall to your level of training, whatever you consider to be normal. And most people's normal is relying on external data or external validation. They want the parent to tell them. And I think that my experience in regard to scientific research is what's very common is there's a reporter who's a journalist that writes about a study that puts it out, or someone is writing a blog and they put 10 citations, but people don't actually read the research or the methods or comb through it themselves. And what we end up with is a lot of people who are, and even if they did, everybody's different, I want a parent. I want an authority. I'm a child. I want a parent to tell me that I should be taking 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, or whatever the fuck it is, and have no idea of how it impacts how I feel. I've had so many people, I may recommend a supplement. And I may go, hey, you might want to try this. I'm never like, this will do this for you. I'm like, look, this works for me. I really enjoy it. Maybe like a really powerful nootropic. This thing, like I can't even take the whole dose. I feel like I'm blowing my brains out.
Yeah.
And then people take it like, yeah, I like tried 2 doses, didn't feel anything. And I'm going, yeah, I know the ingredients in this thing. I don't know how it's not having an impact on you. Like, is it, well, I think a lot of times people are expecting it to be caffeine. Like it's like, this isn't supposed to be stimulating in the way they're used to being stimulated. So that makes me, those types of conversations make me wonder of like, are they just don't even know that they're experiencing something different, or they're not experiencing something different at all. And it might be that it's not having the same impact for them as it is for me. And I'm like, and there's all this research that suggests that it is, and then people will just keep taking supplements that aren't working because there's research to say that it works for the most people.
This thing worked in this way with this specific group of people at this specific time and this specific place. Let's see how this works, right? Like Rhonda Patrick put out that vitamin D might help with the COVID thing, right? And that is probably true for people who, like, if you want to supplement vitamin D, but do you absorb that vitamin D that you're supplementing? And are you getting sun? And like how, like all these variables. And it's like, yeah, turns out people who like actually have vitamin D in their life are pretty healthy.
Yeah. This
isn't a crack at Rhonda, like at all. Like she's helping people. She's putting stuff out like sauna. Turns out sauna training could probably help with the COVID thing she put out. Sauna helps with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Sauna mimics endurance training, heat shock proteins. Like it's the same type of stimulus in a different type of environment, right? So I'm not saying don't look at research, but just let it kind of let you go into a rabbit hole, not dictate what you're doing. right? And that's part of our problem is we think this data is what's like the thing. And it's like, no, man, you're the thing. You're the answer. The entire enchilada. And the more that you look for outside information to dictate what you're doing or how to do it, the less you're going to feel right about it. It's like going to a different culture and then jumping on a plane and flying back feels weird. It's like, oh yeah, like, damn, like, should I be doing this? I mean, I don't know. I like where I live. I mean, I'd love to live somewhere different. Trust me, there's other places I'd like to live, and I'd love to live a little deeper and probably out of California, but that time will come, you know?
Yeah.
That time will come.
All right, I got 2 more questions. No, I'll stay out of the fucking.
What?
Well, how do you feel about you know, we've got some people in the government that are making decisions for everybody, or at least making suggestions for everybody. You know, it's fucking 300 million people in this country, and everybody's different, and yet there's a lot of blanket statements being thrown out about how to manage your health and just social life and everything during this situation.
Let me try this. So I'll go back to the inmates. One of the stories that I did with them, another one.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, and this was like after like my 2nd month there, and I felt really comfortable. Like the first couple times I went in, I was like, fuck, like,
yeah, I bet.
This is nuts. Anyway, I was very comfortable, and I brought up this story. I said, look, there's a group of people that decide to give up all possessions, move to the middle of nowhere in the mountains in Asia, isolate themselves, and they engage in a breath practice and meditate and find enlightenment, and rarely do they eat. What's the difference between them and you? You didn't choose to be here. Do you want to choose? How do you want to do your time? What do you want to learn? That's the difference. One person made a choice, one person didn't. I have met and know people who've been in situations that I couldn't even imagine in war scenario, right? There's movies made about people, but the fact of the matter is no, there's only one freedom. There's one freedom. Nobody can control that. And if that's what you want to give up, by all means, that's your choice. That's Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
In between stimulus and response is a choice every single time. Rarely do we like to fucking say that I had a choice in anything when it doesn't go the way we like, right? When what I'm learning right now is that when shit hits the fan and I don't like I'm like, oh my God, this is the opportunity. This is it. Like, oh shit, here we are. Okay. Like I had a guy who I mentored, and I like for 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months. And he we obviously went through all this stuff I was talking about, and I get into breath control and all this stuff with them, but it's like, it's not about breathing. And this is what I tell people that I work with. I'm like, look, even though I'm talking about breathing and breath works it's at the fundamental layer. We just skipped it. This is why we have to introduce it. But the moment that you believe that breathing is the answer, you just miss the entire point. And this goes back like Bruce Lee and this, you know, this whole thing, like, you know, show where's the moon, you know, and it's like you point at the moon, and this is the tool, the finger. If I don't know what the moon is, you need to show me what that is. That thing up there. Do I need to actually point at that moon again in order to show you? No, because you understand what the moon is, right? But if you get stuck on the moon, you miss the whole star. You miss everything. You miss the whole universe. You miss everything else that's going on, right? And so getting caught up in all this stuff is what we tend to do. And it's like we forget that we have the answer to everything inside of us. It's just how we choose to see it. And when I get a situation I don't like, you know, you need to be vaccinated or this and that. I don't remember the last time I got a flu shot.
Yeah.
Why would I mean, I'm not saying what I'm going to do with COVID, but who's going to dictate what I do? Last I remember, there was a First and a Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment is in place just in case that first one falls apart.
Yeah.
And I stick true to that. Like that's just who I am. I'm sorry. I treat people with kindness. I'm nice to people. I don't want to start a war. I don't want any of that. But I can you that, like, look, man, I should be able to say what I want to say. And I believe I grew up in this country in the manner that I did. But the fact of the matter is there's still this thing inside that I have, that is the ultimate freedom.
Yeah.
And when I let go of all those preconceived notions of what freedom actually is outside of that, I am free.
Yeah.
And so, like, look, man, I've always been punk rock. So people are going to go this way. I'm going to go that way.
Yeah.
I can guarantee it, dude. It's why we don't talk about breath work in this woo woo way. Like,
yeah.
Hey, let's just, like, I could be making thousands and thousands of dollars right this very second by going and doing a bunch of fucking, like, ramped up fucking trippy psychedelic fucking breathe out sessions with people. Why aren't you? That's so dumb, because that doesn't fucking fulfill me.
Yeah.
That's not freedom. That's called fucking unfreedom.
Yeah.
You know?
Love it.
So anyway,
I'm with you, man. Like, if the crowd is going one way, fuck that.
yeah,
I mean,
there's a problem.
It's probably a problem. Status quo usually takes you towards, it's a median thing, and it's not interesting. Like,
No.
they're already doing it. Why? Like, why do you want to do what everyone else is doing?
I'm an artist, man. Through and through. I am. That's what I do. I'm an artist. I show people what they didn't. I see things. I like to see things in a way that nobody's looking at them. So art is nothing more than showing people what they don't already see, what they can't see, right? And so that's what like breathing. Oh yeah, I don't need to fucking breathe. No, you don't. Here's my shtick on it. Oh shit, I'd never thought about it like that. There you go.
There you go. All right, last thing. Shit, man, I wish I would have asked this before, because I feel like it belongs earlier in the conversation, but we'll end on something practical.
Okay.
Which people do like to end on something practical. So I noticed that when I'm nose breathing and training, that my mechanics are way more sound. The moment I open my mouth, I start experiencing mechanical breakdown. And that was one of the things that really got me into nose breathing. Most of the time when I'm training, so the moment I open my mouth, I'm like, I should probably just stop anyway, because my mechanics are breaking down. Like, why is that?
Well, you shouldn't have to stop. Like, you shouldn't allow your mechanics to break down if you're mouth breathing. But here's why. And
it's like almost automatic that my mechanics are sound when I'm nose breathing, and I have to practice extra vigilance when I breathe through my mouth. Yeah.
This is going to be a bold statement, but I believe it to be true. And it's just a belief, so it could be wrong. But all mechanics, everything, the fundamental layer of mechanics is about one thing: how you get air into this cage. And if this cage is off in any way, shape, or form, there is a compensatory reaction that has to occur. Why would that be? Because I need to get air, I need to get oxygen into the system, and I need to offload carbon dioxide in a specific way. And if I am inefficient, if I'm in a poor position as a result of that, I compensate in order to make up for that, right? And so when I mouth breathe, I can get away with fucking murder, because I can move more air quickly. My breath didn't even change there. And I'm completely slouched over, versus that sucks. That doesn't suck.
Right.
Right. And it's it doesn't have to be rigid, right? You just have to understand, like, we're the only animal that outside of our gait can we control our breathing. So here's something fascinating about horses. Because they move so much air so quickly, when they run, especially the racing horses, they don't actually contract their diaphragm at all. They actually leave it in an open state. And what happens is the guts, when they land, drives the air out of that diaphragm. It just poof, right? And so the air goes poof, but they don't breathe out of their mouth either. They breathe out of those big old nostrils. Yeah. And then they can't breathe through their mouth because it's not an efficient pathway through to those lungs, because when they're running, it's the nostrils and the nose cavity that send that direct message, so that air, and all animals are essentially the same. Cheetahs, lions, tigers, fucking deer, antelope, boom, boom, boom. Their gait, when they land, the exhale happens, right? We are independent of that because we're horizontal, or we're vertical. And so it becomes more important to understand how much stability we actually have around this place, but how much mobility we actually have, how much we can actually get away with. And this is where, like, oh, that's all I got. Oh, now I can move.
There you go.
There it is. Right. So this is why we'll challenge people. Like, we'll get them to just hang, right? Only nose breathing, full inhale, full exhale. 1 or 2 breaths and people are off because they can't even breathe. And it's like, what an opportunity. We get to open you up. Like,
interesting.
Yeah, man.
Hanging from a bar and breathing through the nose, people are having a hard time with that.
Oh, dude. So we'll do things like where we work out, we put them on through a set, and then you got the recovery is hanging and breathing through your nose.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, but it's not just hanging. Go into a plank, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You look, and so Rob's putting some stuff together right now, but you'll start to see athletes who are very, very CO2 intolerant. When they go up and hang, or they go up and get in these isolated positions, how quickly they start to shake. That's CO2 intolerance.
Yeah, I do. Man, I feel so good about myself right now. I've been doing a lot of this stuff, not thinking about it as deeply as you have, and going off of intuition.
Of course you're engaged in it. You're a deeply fucking spiritual person who's like who's been trying to connect, he's been connecting to himself for as long as I remember. So
yeah,
you know.
It's been cool. I do gymnastic strength work in the morning, and it's always nose breathing. It's always about pushing air into every part that I can, and noticing where there's restriction, and the breathing mechanics have become I've improved my breathing mechanics so much over the last, so I've been paying attention, maybe 4 or 5 years, especially, basically I had that hernia surgery, and that really kicked it off. Talking to Jill Miller, and then realizing all my breathing was fucked up from a mechanics perspective. And I've gained so much flexibility, and my gait is improved. My running is improved. Like, things that I used to have poor mechanics on, or mobility restrictions, working on breath has made the biggest difference. And I tell people that, and I can tell they think I'm full of shit or something. I'm just like, yeah,
it's okay.
Between breath and ayahuasca, I'm like, I can move.
Yeah.
And ayahuasca, in my experience, has improved my breathing mechanics. It helps remove whatever was in the way that was causing me to be tight there. Yeah. So
yeah, it's interesting, man. You know, interesting times. And you know, we're just looking at creating a language that makes this stuff accessible for people. And you know, I understand people who are just like, yeah, like, yeah, I mean, like, you tell them like breathing's made me more mobile, all this stuff. Like, I get why people aren't like, they're like, yeah, right. You know, and it's like perfectly fine. You're going to be late to the game, just so we're clear. Like, the longer you hold on to this, that doesn't mean you need to go sit in full lotus and huff and puff, man.
Yeah.
You know, but the fact is, I mean, these are the exact same things that happened to me, but my brain changed, my nervous system changed. Like, I mean, we've figured out what, I mean, look, man, addiction is nothing more, and we all have this problem, but it's like, it's the dopamine railway. The dopamine's a hell of a drug, and what used to be said is cocaine's a hell of a drug. It's not the cocaine, man. It's the dopamine that's accompanying, it's going with that cocaine, and addiction is nothing more than an attempt to regulate your nervous system, except I'm reaching for this outside thing, caffeine, alcohol. Like, and I'm not saying you can't have caffeine, you can't have alcohol. It's just understanding, oh, am I using this to regulate myself all the time? If I'm doing that, I'm missing what's going on, like how all this stuff's going on, right?
Well, you're not only that, you're just missing out on your potential.
Oh yeah, but this is the thing.
Like,
it's like,
do it like my whole approach is, what can I do without anything from the outside, and then layer in the outside stuff. But I have a nice consistent ecosystem right here. So when I introduce something, I'm not guessing on what did what.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the thing, is my entire nervous system has changed. I used to be so sympathetic dominant. Yeah. So stressed, so like on. And now I'm just like, bro, I go into some of the toughest shit of my life, and I'm like, work through this.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Like, I've been training for this. I mean, almost breaking my neck. Like,
oh yeah.
Okay.
Jeez.
New game. Like, to work back from being paralyzed. But that was my instant reaction versus poor me. Fuck. I'm like, all this stuff. It was like, no, this is an opportunity. And the reality is I can't walk. Like,
yeah.
So let's not play in an illusion.
Well, here's the thing is, and you keep saying this, and I want to reiterate, is what do you do when shit hits the fan?
Yeah.
When the stress hits, how do you respond? And that's where all the practice comes in. Practice. And I know that I've had people look at a lot how I handle a lot of situations and how my life goes, and people go, man, I wish I could do that. I'm like, it's been practice. If I was not consciously waking up in the morning and practicing breathing, if I wasn't journaling and looking at my fucking thoughts and then asking myself if these things are true or not, or if this is my imagination just fucking with me, and then rewriting that in a way that's more affirming to what to the reality that I'm creating or experiencing. These are all the practice. This is stuff that I just do all the time that people go, he's doing weird shit. And then shit hits the fan. I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna go hang out in Utah and I'm gonna get away from all the people.
Yeah. This is exactly where we're moving all of our training to. It's like, I mean, tomorrow I do a webinar. It's called N = 1.
I saw that. Yeah.
And it literally
is it sold out yet?
It is, but there's still spots that we'll still
cool.
We'll open it up. But here's the thing is I've learned how to integrate emotions and thinking and breath control into high intensity work, whether that's just a positional asana or like holding in some yoga position, or whether that's doing some sort of work, right? Like on a bike or burpees, right? Identification of these things, and then how to actually understand where breath fits in and see the immediate difference of what happens with your emotions when things get controlled, and the difference in what you feel and how attached we are to our emotional response to something, and it painting a reality that's not true.
Yeah.
And that's what this, and I mean, this is where our work really, I'm really stoked on how we've really been able to transition this. And I mean, I love performance. I love training. Like, I love this stuff, but I've always felt like there's this place where it needs to really integrate at another level. And I think we're finally getting to that point, and breath control helps with that, getting to that point and understanding what that is and differentiating what's real and what's not. And that, putting yourself into a heightened stress situation, teaches you for when you are actually in a situation when the shit hits the fan and it's like, oh, this isn't that bad. like I can manage this right now.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Thanks for joining us today. Where do they find your stuff?
Powerspeedendurance.com. My Instagram is where I'm most active, @ Brian Mackenzie, Mackenzie. Yeah. And I mean, I've got a website too that has my bio and consult and mentorship program, which is brianmackenzie.com. But most everything is on anything breath control related is on powerspeedendurance.com.
Cool. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, brother.
See you around.
All right, man.
All right. Hey, stay on for a second.